What's going on, everyone? In this video, we're going to be talking about why most info and education businesses will have a hard time scaling in 2026. And it's not because the market is dying or slowing down, but it's more so because most brands are still selling like it's 2020. And while everyone's talking about the different strategies and tactics to keep aggressively scaling, no one's really talking about how you have to adapt your marketing in order to survive. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the same frameworks that we're applying across all of our portfolio to survive 2026, but also scale beyond the 7 and 8 figure levels. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So first thing we'll dive into is the current market conditions and how people are buying right now. So recently, Google did a study and it's called the 7-11-4 rule. To give you some context, they did this study in 2020. And in 2020, for someone to be a complete stranger and then buy something from you in the high ticket range required about 7 different touch points. And touch points is basically someone interacting with your marketing, brand, sales to pursue buying from you. Now, today in 2025, it requires about 7 hours of consumption. So the total time someone spends consuming podcasts, YouTube, any sort of content you have out there, someone needs to consume about at least 7 hours to consider buying from you. Then on top of that, they need to have 11 different touch points with your brand. So same as the 7 in 2020 and 4 different locations, meaning they'll need to interact with you across multiple different domains. And that could be phone, text, email, Instagram, YouTube, but different channels to actually convert them. Now, back then, we've done this as well, where we were able to scale one brand, one offer through one platform to an 8-figure level mark, and we were able to do it for multiple years consecutively without any interruption. And so the level of marketing didn't change, the level of effort didn't change because the market maintained the same. That was right before or around the boom before COVID happened. But if you look at the dynamic now, it's much, much harder to convert people, right? And then there's a second thing to this, right? And that's purchasing frequency. So you'll notice that, a lot of people in our space talk about low ticket to high ticket ascension funnels, which are a lot more complicated than most make it to seem. However, right now, for most people that are running low ticket to high ticket offers, are trying to ascend within a 5 to 10 day period, or else they're going to end up losing on the cost required to purchase this person, the cost required to get this person to buy the low ticket offer they had. And so they're running a very, very aggressive sales process in order to get them to convert to high ticket. Now, that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just, again, which side you're going to lean in harder as a business, whether it's marketing or sales or whether it's balanced. That's your preference and you want to lean into your strengths. But that ultimately is going to have a ceiling for most people, right? And so I'll demonstrate what that means. So right now, the people that buy something from you, usually there's only about a 20% chance that they'll actually buy something from you again. And so there's 2 parts to this. That number has decreased over time. And the other thing is that if you can crack the code to having someone purchasing the second time from you, and cracking the code ultimately comes down to you solving the problem that they came to you for the first time, and that'll give them enough of the dopamine and the trust in order to buy from you the second time, which usually most brands fail to do. And so that's why it's super important. But if you look at the number here, if someone can make a purchase from you the second time, there's almost a 200% likelihood that they'll buy a third product from you. Now, the companies that understand this and that are going to double down on this know that the LTV is so much higher for us to give it up or give up a lead at the first products stage, right? And so what that means is if you're a brand that does fairly a good job acquiring top of funnel traffic, but you struggle to maintain that relationship with leads, most funnels are looking like this right now, right? The ideal funnel looks like this, but in 2025, it's gotten more and more constricted because of this over here. Usually, someone's going to buy from you once, and because they're not going to buy from you the second time, what you're doing is if you spent your hard earned money to get this person to be aware about your niche, your problem, and the solution that you potentially have to offer for them, but you weren't able to deliver them the promise that you made to them on the first product, they're going to end up going to your competitor and they're going to purchase the second product from them, or the first and then the second. And since this competitor knows how to optimize for the third product or upsell eventually into the third product, that's where they're going to make the most money, right? So not only did you give up leads, but you're giving up market share at this point. And as a result of this whole thing, right, there's low LTV for most brands, and the acquisition cost is only climbing for most people as well. So that's the state we're in. It's pretty dark and not the nicest. It's pretty aggressive, and so that's why we have to be more creative if we're going to get people to buy at the same level we once a few years ago, right? Now, some of the common objections that you're probably seeing in your marketing and sales is I bought XYZ already and it didn't work, right? So same thing over here. And I don't know if this is going to work for me. And I'm grouping these together, but usually most sales call objections are going to come down to this. And then some of you may say that there's also financial objections. Now, this is just our philosophy around it, but we don't consider financial as an objection unless it's truthfully, logistically, they have no money at all. But most of the time, it's usually that there's a bigger underlying reason why they're not buying. And it's going to come down to fear and trust for most people in our industry. Now, if that's the case and that's the common practice you're seeing on your sales calls or through your marketing, that means they skipped some steps in the customer journey. And we'll talk about what the customer journey looks like or should look like for you to scale in 2026. But that means they skipped something. So either they didn't consume enough content, they didn't have enough touch points, or they weren't targeted from multiple different points or platforms to build enough trust with your brand. And it's going to be one of those things, but that kind of ties it back down to here, right? And now, once, let's just say you do establish that and you are able to track and build a funnel or marketing towards this rule, and just imagine that rule is only going to get a lot more harder. So you want to think ahead and be like, okay, if this is what it currently takes, just imagine what it's going to take in 2026. It's going to take a lot more. And so that's why you probably see even a lot of brands shifting into live streaming right now, because it's more consumption time, right? Now, how does this tie into how 2026 is going to look? So if we look at the landscape in terms of how many people are selling education and jumping into info, it's only increasing. And so if you look at the trends and if you look at where this market's going, by 2030, it's going to be even more massive. And so because of that, competition is going to increase. Now, the only way to separate yourself is to double down on value, proof. Proof is the number one thing, no matter what you can do in your marketing. It's going to be every sales tactic. It's going to be every little, gimmick you could think of, because it's the one thing that's going to separate you from the rest of the crowd, right? So speaking about your results, why you're actually different is going to be the main anchored point, because a lot of creators or people stepping into this industry probably have less of that. So if you've been in this industry or your niche for a while, ideally you would want to have more built up proof, and that will get you the upper edge, right? But that's the solution for that. Now, most buyers are increasing their expectations, mainly because, again, they were probably promised, rainbows and sunshines and these extreme deliverables on the first time they purchased a product, and they fell short of that. And now they're also seeing the same different presentations and same different offers across every single sales call. So there's nothing unique about what you have to offer. And so this is a little bit more product related, but how can you showcase to the average prospect or buyer that if I make an investment, whether it's a low ticket product or high ticket product, that I'm going to get a better ROI on this? And that is going to come down to, again, how you uniquely position your value and also incorporating things like software, AI to make this look and be a better and easier experience for most people. So that's that for solving that problem. Now, the main thing for this video is, acquisition costs increasing because of all of the market condition right now. Now, the main thing for this is that you need an ecosystem. And again, you probably hear this word floating around our industry, but the real definition of that we'll define in just a second. But you need an ecosystem over just a single high ticket offer. And so if you don't have an ecosystem or don't build towards an ecosystem, most likely within the next 5 years, you're going to suffer from a massive decline in your business in this space. Now, this finishes off and ties into the main thing, which is what's the business model to actually make this work. Now, the ecosystem is directly correlated to this. So if you look at this graph, we are demonstrating the quickest way someone's going to purchase from you, and then the slowest conversion is all the way at the end of this. Now, what's happening in our market right now is most people are making direct offers because, again, it's the easiest thing to do. You're just going to your market, you're giving them the option to buy, and the bottom 3% of people will probably buy. Now, obviously, when you deplete the bottom 3%, that's when you'll notice that, okay, my sales are not coming through as they once used to. The thing that we're doing right now that's going to be a lot harder, and people are already suffering from this, is that when you're making direct offers, it depends on who you're making those direct offers to, right? Because you can make a direct offer to people who've purchased a product from you. You can make a direct offer to people who've attended an event that could be live or virtual. You could be making a offer to people who've purchased something physical, like a book from you. You could be making an offer to your community. Now, most people in our industry are doing the slowest conversion point with the quickest conversion point. And when you do that, you'll probably have some sort of success. But again, when we look at the funnel, you're only going to be able to capture that bottom 3, being generous here, maybe 5% of your market. And since this is the first entry point where usually people are finding you from, where there's no gateway or there's no wall in between someone, finding you, when this is YouTube, Instagram, basically your socials, that's the most early stage of your funnel. And then you have your most bottom stage here, which is your direct offer to them. Now, when you are selling to these people, it's going to take a lot harder or a lot more time and energy to get that person across the finish line. And that's why probably you'll see that your show rates on calls are low, your conversion rates are low. Those are all factors that are going to contribute to that. Now, let's just say you have a community like a school group or WAP or something. That's going to be probably someone that's closer to the buyer's pocket over here, but they're still going to require a lot more time and energy to get to that bottom part. And then let's take it up a notch to buying something physical from you. Right now, they're getting a little bit closer to the buyer's pocket. Let's just say they're doing webinars or events now. Now you're getting a little bit even closer, right? Or I guess you can make that comparison a little bit similar to each other. These two kind of fall close to another. If they bought something previously from you, they're probably going to be the closest to your buyer's pocket. Now, this is where it gets tricky because you'll also, again, notice a lot of people will go straight to creating a low ticket product. And sometimes you'll create a low ticket product that hinders your high ticket product because they already got what they needed for this low ticket offer. And what you're solving for at the high ticket level does not really complement the new problem that they have after they've completed this. Or the other thing is, the flip side is usually most low ticket offers, don't do a good enough job of getting someone to the promised result that they had. And usually at that point, the customer journey just ends right there. So the LTV for a potential prospect that could have been maybe $30,000 for your business, and that again depends if you're B2C or B2B, but let's just say you're B2B, between $30,000 to $100,000 potentially, that got stopped out at maybe a few $1,000s or maybe a couple $100. And so now, again, back to that principle we talked about at the beginning, you're giving up market share to someone that can build a great first product and then can deliver on a great second product and eventually get them through. Now, if I had to summarize this whole thing in terms of an ecosystem, is that you can't just do one thing anymore to scale at a high ticket. You need to do a multitude of these things at the highest level in order to get to the level and scale at a very profitable margin. And so, in order to do so, you'll want to figure out not how to do all of these at once, because that's how you're going to break a lot of things. If you try to do all of these things simultaneously, you're going to be spread too thin, unless you have a huge team or you have great systems and processes, then by all means. But for the average person that's starting off, that's probably doing only one of these and mostly either just content and the direct offer, what you want to figure out first before even proceeding to build an ecosystem is figure out how you can make your first offer a lot better, or whatever offer you have. How can you make it a lot better and a lot more scalable? Because once you do tack on more things and you have more people coming in, you don't want the buyer's experience to drop, right? So you want to figure out how to make an offer better. And that ties into buyers' expectations rising, because that's going to be a problem you're going to have to solve later on. So you want to simultaneously focus on that, but figure out if this is an A+ category for you right now. And then most likely, if you're doing content, you want to see, are you doing the best job here? Now, maybe you're mostly dominant on Instagram. Challenge yourself to see, can you be more dominant on YouTube? Can you be more dominant on X? And how can you be more omnipresent for your audience? Now, if you can then rank this at an A+ or even B level, then you want to move on to the next stage. But usually what happens is most people are at a D level here, and then they'll do the next thing and they'll start a community, and then the community will be done very poorly as well at a very low level. And then that's going to almost void all the trust that you've built with these people, because this is the first action step that you're asking them to take, right? I'm assuming this is the first action step you're making them take after they've watched your content. But let's just say they've built trust here and then they move on to this stage. And since this is done poorly, they're not going to move to that conversion or that level where they're going to buy something from you, because again, the customer journey ends right there. Now, or it's going to take a lot harder or longer for you to re-earn that person's trust. But that's why you want to figure out between these two, are you doing a great job at those first? And you can also batch traffic in here as well, because if you're running paid media, that also factors in terms of how well or how much you're spending to acquire a customer right now. And if that's close to you having very, very slim margins, then that's something that you obviously want to take a look at, right? And you want to explore, does having organic media for most people is going to be the most long-term solution you can think of, right? So if you're running paid, mixing organic and paid right now is a big factor to get people to a quicker conversion. So figuring out those things is more important first, prioritizing which one of these you're ready to take on. And then as you do each one of them, you can get progressively better at them. But eventually, by the end of 2026, you want a multitude of all of these things working together simultaneously. And that's going to keep getting people funneled from the top to the bottom in a very holistic and predictable way. And then you can start playing a more math game to figure out how long it actually takes someone to go from here to becoming a high ticket buyer. So that's mainly it for this video. But if you want any more context on this or any other ideas that you guys have that I should touch on, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.